in verborgener Weise gegeben. Sie ist die Mutter, der Jesus jeden der Jünger anvertraut hat und die gesamte Gemeinschaft. Und vor allem stellen wir fest, dass die wirksame...
You've been listening to the Pope in front of that crowd of 1 million people who've gathered in Rome to witness the ceremony surrounding the beatification of Pope Joahn Paul II.
Die dann bereitet werden.
Am Altar wird nun Folgendes geschehen. Der Papst, der jetzt eben zum Altar getreten ist, der wird die Schale mit den Hostien und den Kelch mit Wein emporheben und ein Gebet dazu leise sprechen. Und wenn er das getan hat, umschreitet er den Altar.
And Barbara, with regard to that second miracle, what happens now?
Well, basically it all hinges on the Vatican proving that a miracle took place. For the Pope who's now been beatified, for him to be canonized, another miracle needs to be proven. And the way that the Vatican does it is that basically they get lots of claims in. So when it comes to this miracle, the claim by the French nun, she said that she had Parkinson's disease. Then her and her fellow nuns specifically prayed to Pope Joahn Paul II, and that after that she was cured. And the Vatican is now satisfied that there was no scientific explanation for her Parkinson's having been cured. There's also a time period for it to be classified as a miracle. The cure has to be for a disease that should be considered terminal, that otherwise would not heal itself, and also it has to be within a certain period of time. And the nun claims that she was essentially cured overnight, woke up one morning, realized that she didn't feel the same, and then found that the Parkinson's disease had gone. So the Vatican gets lots of claims along those lines from the faithful across the world. The Vatican investigates those claims, and in this particular case, the Vatican is satisfied that a miracle did indeed take place, because there was no scientific reason why this nun's Parkinson's would have just disappeared.
But I think I'm right in remembering round about this time last year there were those who were questioning whether in fact she had got better and whether in fact she had got Parkinson's.
Indeed, there were reports in the Polish press questioning about the initial diagnosis anyway, whether she actually did have Parkinson's disease. So there have been some question marks over that. Also, some people worried because it may be that she could maybe get Parkinson's either again or get it for the first time, depending on which theory you believe, that she might get that again. So there have been some question marks. I think at any rate, the Vatican is content. That's what they care about. They say they needed to be convinced that a miracle had taken place for the beatification to go ahead, and they seem satisfied that in this case it has, and they are currently investigating another 5 claims and seeing whether one of those would lead to the second miracle needed for the Pope to be canonized and be made a saint.
John Paul II, Barbara, loved by many people, controversial as we heard in Bernard's report, but interesting historically in so many other ways.
Who is the person who received the miracle. She was cured miraculously, instantaneously from Parkinson's disease. She had become an invalid. She could barely walk and she couldn't move her arm, and she had to give up her work, which is in a hospital taking care of small children. And here this morning, she was there up on the altar, and she carried the relic of John Paul II, which was a fairly large relic. She carried it up onto the altar. And it was really a beautiful moment, because that was the miracle before our eyes. Here, all of us in the square, 1 million people seeing the miracle played out.
But Father, how do you say with absolute certainty this was a miracle? The point I'm making is that a miracle is in the eye of the beholder. It's up to you if you want to believe in a miracle or not. Some people might say, I know there has been apparent proof that this was a miracle, but it could have been anything that brought her back.
Sure, that's a good question, because we find ourselves right at the edge between faith and reason. And what reason can say, what science in fact reports, is that there is no human explanation for what happened with her. So we can simply step back and say, look, the doctors didn't do that, medicine didn't do that, science can't do that, and she didn't do it on her own. So what happened? then the next step is faith, is to say that was through the prayer to John Paul II that God did something which is beyond our human, natural, scientific measurements. And that's why the 1 million people here were cheering.
Pope's fast-tracked to this point. He's now got to the point of beatification. How quickly can this happen again? What's the next step for him to go to sainthood?
The next step is really another miracle, because what the Church says is that God needs to tell us that he's already enjoying eternal life in heaven. And that's what the miracle of the nun who was cured is, one step towards us. And the Church, out of a sense of caution and conservatism, says we need another miracle to be totally certain that he really is in heaven. So the next step is, in fact, it's already begun, because many people, it seems hundreds of people, have already sent in favors and miracles, and they've reported it to the postulation of the cause. So that material is being gathered, and it will be studied, and it will be handed over to the Vatican. And then the Vatican sets up a commission of theologians and of scientists to look and determine whether or not it is really inexplicable, instantaneous, and definitive. And if that were to be again the case, as it was with Sister Marie Simon Pierre, if another such miracle will occur, then the canonization could proceed.
I think it will be intriguing to see how that does play out. As I say, I am being a little bit cynical, but I thank you for your time. Father Robert Gall, Professor of Ethics at the University of the Holy Cross in Rome.